The alien city was always gray to her. The little alien girl, Lyra, walked quietly along the dusty street. Clutching the edge of her scarf as traders shouted, guards stomped by, and tall buildings loomed over her. To everyone else, the banners and fabrics waved in colors. To her, they were all the same, shapes of light and darkness. She had never known what red was, or blue, or green. Her people said she was cursed, born without the sight of color. Children whispered cruel words when she passed. Some threw pebbles. Others laughed and told her she was broken, unfit to be part of their world. And though she tried to ignore them, the emptiness in her chest grew heavier every day. That morning, as the sun rose pale over the horizon, she sat at the corner of the marketplace. Her hands trembled as she held a fruit given to her by an old merchant. She could taste its sweetness, feel its weight, but she could not see its true beauty. She whispered to herself, "If only just once I could see what they see." It was then she noticed him. The human, he was different from the others. Taller than most of the aliens, his skin tanned from travel, his clothes dusty from long roads. His eyes scanned the crowd with sharp focus, and when they landed on her, they did not hold judgment. Instead, they softened. He approached slowly, kneeling so his face met hers. "You can't see the colors, can you?" he asked gently. Her breath caught. No one had spoken to her like that before, not with kindness, not with understanding. She only nodded, clutching the fruit tighter. The human introduced himself as Kale, a traveler, an engineer who had wandered across worlds. He told her he had once met others like her, beings who could not see the light as it was meant to be seen. And in his old world, they had made something to help. "A gift," he said. "A tool. Something that can change how your eyes see." She blinked, confused. "You mean you can fix me?" Kale shook his head. "You were never broken. But maybe I can help you see." For the first time in her life, Lyra felt hope, but fear quickly followed. She had been tricked before. Her people had promised cures, only to laugh at her helplessness. Was this another cruel game? As if reading her thoughts, Kale placed a hand on his chest and whispered, "I promise you, little one, if you trust me, I will build something that will let you see what others cannot. You will see colors." The words shook her to her core. Colors. The dream she had long buried flickered back to life. Still, the shadows of doubt haunted her. "But why would you do this for me? You don't even know me." Kale smiled softly. "Because no one deserves to live in a world without beauty. Not you." The market bells rang loudly, and the crowd pushed between them, breaking the fragile moment. Kale stood, handing her a small trinket, an unfinished piece of glasswork glowing faintly. "Meet me here tomorrow," he said. "I'll show you something you'll never forget." And then he vanished into the sea of strangers. Lyra sat frozen, clutching the glass piece. Her heart raced. Tomorrow he would return. Tomorrow she might see colors. That night, she could not sleep. She lay awake under the pale moons, staring at the small shard in her hands. She whispered again and again, "What will colors look like? Will they hurt my eyes? Will they be soft or sharp or bright?" For the first time in years, she smiled before sleep found her. But in the shadows beyond the market, someone else had been watching. Tall figures in dark robes, their eyes cold and cruel. They had heard the human's words, and they did not like the idea of a cursed child gaining something so precious. The promise of colors was dangerous, and danger in their world was never left unanswered. The following morning, the square was buzzing with voices. Traders shouted over prices. Children ran between stalls, and banners fluttered in the wind. To Lyra, it was still the same world of gray and shadows. Yet her heart pounded differently today, because she was waiting for him. And then she saw him. Kale pushed through the crowd, his travel coat dusty, his hands carrying a small wooden case. His eyes met hers, and he smiled as though he kept a promise carved into stone. "You came," she whispered, almost afraid it wasn't real. "I said I would," Kale answered, kneeling in front of her again. He opened the case carefully, revealing a strange, beautiful object inside. A pair of delicate glasses, their rims shining faintly in the daylight. The The lenses glimmered, thin as dragonfly wings, etched with tiny lines that caught the light like flowing rivers. Lyra's hands trembled as she reached toward them. "Are those for me?" Kale nodded. "They won't hurt. They're meant to bend the light, to help your eyes see what they've never seen before. It may take a moment, but when it works," he paused, his smile deepening, "you'll see colors." The word colors echoed in her mind. She swallowed hard, fear and hope twisting together. For a moment, she hesitated. What if it didn't work? What if she was still cursed, still broken? Sensing her hesitation, Kale placed the glasses gently into her hands. "Trust yourself. Trust me." Her breath shook. Slowly, she lifted the glasses and placed them over her eyes. The world blurred for a heartbeat, then sharpened, and suddenly something changed. At first, she thought her eyes were playing tricks. The gray banners she had known her entire life seemed to shimmer. Then one of them glowed, not with light, but with something more, a deep, burning warmth that she could feel in her chest. "Red." Kale whispered beside her. "That's red." Her lips parted. Her hands flew to her mouth as tears welled in her eyes. She turned her head quickly, and the next banner blazed differently. Cool, soft, and calming. "Blue," Kale said gently. She gasped, choking on a sob. Then she looked down at the fruit stand near her feet, where a basket was filled with round shapes, each one bursting with shades she had no name for. "Green, yellow, orange." Kale whispered as he watched her face light up. And then, as though the universe itself wanted to prove it was real, a rainbow arched across the sky after a brief sprinkle of rain. She froze, staring up at the brilliance spreading across the heavens. 7 perfect bands of color, each one brighter than the last. Her knees buckled, and she fell forward, clutching Kale's sleeve. "It's beautiful," she cried, her voice breaking. "It's all so beautiful." He steadied her, his eyes warm. "Now you see what we humans have always fought to protect. Beauty, wonder, the things worth saving." The crowd around them had gone silent. Many stared in shock, some whispering, others glaring. To them, the cursed girl had no right to witness such things. The robed figures from the shadows watched closely, too, their eyes narrowing as they slipped away to report what they had seen. But Lyra did not notice. She could not stop staring, pointing at every flower, every cloth, every sign. She laughed and wept at once, spinning in place, as though afraid the colors might vanish if she blinked. For the first time in her life, she was not broken. She was alive. Kale watched her quietly, pride shining in his eyes. Yet behind his calm smile, he knew the danger this moment would bring. A gift like this would not go unnoticed. And in a world where fear ruled, beauty was often treated as a threat. As the sun burned bright and the rainbow faded, he placed a hand on her shoulder. "You've taken your first step. But Lyra, this is only the beginning." And in the distance, the sound of boots striking stone echoed closer. The market was loud that morning. Voices shouting, footsteps rushing, carts rolling over the stone streets. To Lyra, it was the same gray world she had always known. Yet today was different. Today, her heart beat with a hope so strong it almost hurt. Kale returned as he had promised. His coat was dusty, and his hands carried a small wooden case. When his eyes found hers, he smiled, and the tightness in her chest eased. "You came," she whispered. "I told you I would," he answered, kneeling in front of her. He opened the case with care. Inside was an object unlike anything she had ever seen. A pair of glasses, thin and delicate, their lenses glowing faintly as they caught the light. Tiny etched lines ran through the glass like rivers of silver. Her small hands trembled. "For me?" "For you," Kale said softly. "They don't fix you, Lyra, because you were never broken, but they will let you see what you've always missed." She wanted to believe him, but fear weighed heavy. What if it doesn't work? What if I'm still the cursed one? Kale gently placed the glasses in her hands. "Trust me." She closed her eyes, lifted them slowly, and slid them onto her face. At first, nothing. A blur, a haze. Then something shifted. The banners above market stalls shimmered, and suddenly one blazed with fire. It wasn't light, not like the gray tone she knew. It was different, warm, alive. Her breath caught. "That's red," Kale whispered. Her eyes widened. She turned quickly to another banner, and this time it shimmered in a way that cooled her heart, soft and deep. "Blue," Kale said gently. Her lips parted. Her chest shook. A sob tore from her throat as she spun. Looking at the fruit stalls where the baskets overflowed. Shapes she had touched 100 times before now glowed in shades she had no words for. Green, yellow, orange. Kale said as tears filled her eyes. She dropped to her knees, hands covering her face. "It's beautiful," she cried. "It's all so beautiful." Kale knelt beside her, steadying her shoulder. "Now you see what life truly is, what we fight for, what makes everything worth it." And then, as if the universe wanted to bless the moment, a soft rain passed over the square. The clouds broke, and across the sky a brilliant rainbow arched from end to end. Lyra froze. Her mouth fell open. She stared at the 7 glowing bands, each one brighter than the last. Kale leaned close, his voice tender. "That is the gift of light. That is hope." She reached for him, sobbing with joy, clutching his sleeve as though afraid the colors would vanish. Around them, the market had fallen silent. Some whispered in awe, others sneered in anger. A cursed girl, they thought, had no right to such wonders. Among the crowd, shadowed figures in dark robes slipped away, their eyes hard. They had seen enough, but Lyra didn't notice. She turned again and again, pointing, laughing, crying all at once. Her heart felt too full. For the first time in her life, she was not cursed. She was alive. Kale smiled, though his jaw tightened. He knew what her joy would bring. A secret this powerful would not remain safe for long. As the rainbow faded and the sunlight bathed the streets, Kale placed his hand on her shoulder. "This is just the beginning, Lyra, but you must be ready." And in the distance, heavy boots began to echo through the streets. The city had never felt so alive. For Lyra, every corner now glowed with light and color. The sky was no longer dull gray. It was soft blue with streaks of white clouds stretching like ribbons. The trees shimmered in shades of green she had never imagined. Flowers that once seemed lifeless now burst with color so vivid it made her laugh aloud. But as she smiled, the world around her grew darker in other ways. Kale noticed first. The whispers, the glances, the way people stepped aside as they passed through the marketplace. Word had spread quickly. The cursed girl had seen light. The human had changed what should not be changed. He kept his voice calm as they walked. "Keep your hood up," he murmured. "Why?" she asked, her green eyes glowing with wonder. "They're just looking." "They're not just looking," Kale said quietly. "They're afraid. And afraid people do dangerous things." She slowed her pace, lowering her head. For the first time since she had seen colors, fear began to return. At the end of the street, the robed figures waited. 4 of them. Their garments shimmered faintly under the sunlight, but their faces were hidden. The crowd stepped aside as they approached, their presence cold and heavy. One spoke, his voice smooth and sharp. "You have broken the laws of the Sky Temple, human." Kale's hand twitched near his coat. Didn't know seeing colors was a crime. The figure ignored the remark. His gaze fell on Lyra. "You were born under shadow. The gods gave you blindness for a reason. You were never meant to see." Lyra flinched. The words hit like knives. Old wounds reopened. Kale stepped forward. She was never cursed. She was robbed of what's natural. "I just gave it back." The figure's tone hardened. "And now you have cursed us. The light she sees is forbidden. The human has brought corruption." The robed ones lifted their hands. Symbols glowed in the air, strange runes burning like fire. The crowd gasped and backed away. Kale's body moved before thought. He grabbed Lyra's wrist. "Run!" The air cracked behind them as energy slammed into the stones, leaving scorch marks where they'd stood. Lyra screamed, clutching the glasses. Kale pulled her through the narrow streets, weaving between stalls and alleys. The smell of smoke and spice filled the air as chaos spread. "Why are they doing this?" she cried. "Because truth terrifies them," he shouted back. "Because they need control." They turned a corner, breathless. Kale ducked into a narrow passage behind a storage building, pulling her into the shadows. He pressed a finger to his lips. The robed voices echoed through the streets. Find the girl. The cursed one must not leave the city. Lyra trembled. Kale, maybe they're right. Maybe I wasn't meant to see. Maybe I brought danger to everyone. He turned to her sharply, his brown eyes fierce. Don't ever say that. You've done nothing wrong. You've only seen the world as it truly is. She looked down, voice breaking. They want to take it from me. Kale knelt before her, resting a hand gently on her shoulder. Then we don't let them. A deep rumble sounded in the distance, bells from the temple towers. The signal to hunt. Kale exhaled. We can't stay here. They'll search every street. Where will we go? She whispered. He looked toward the distant hills beyond the walls. Out of the city, there's a ridge. A human base not far from here. We'll make it. The alley filled with light. They turned and saw 3 temple guards blocking the exit. Their armor shimmered, their staffs glowing. End of the road, one sneered. Kale stood, his hand steady on the small blaster at his belt. Not yet. The first guard lunged, staff humming with energy. Kale sidestepped, his motion precise. The weapon struck the wall, sparks exploding. Kale fired once, the bolt hitting the ground near their feet. A warning. Get back, he barked. But they advanced. Lyra's hand shook as she clutched the glasses. For a moment, the fear threatened to drown her. Then she saw the flowers in the corner of the alley, glowing under the light. Colors, red, yellow, blue, alive even in danger. This is what I'm fighting for, she thought. Kale, she shouted. Go! He grabbed her hand again, and together they sprinted through a side door. The chase resumed, narrow alleys, twisting roads, shouting guards, glowing staffs cutting the air. When they reached the outer wall, Kale turned to her. Climb. What about you? I'll be right behind you. She climbed quickly, her hand slipping on the rough stone. Behind her, Kale fired again, driving the guards back. As she reached the top, she turned and saw him leap after her. They dropped onto the other side, rolling in the dust. The city lights burned behind them. Ahead lay open wilderness. Kale rose, breathing hard. You wanted to see the world, he said with a tired smile. Now you'll really see it. Lyra looked out the horizon, where the sunset painted the sky in colors she could barely name. Tears filled her eyes again, joy, fear, and wonder all at once. She whispered, Thank you, Kale. He smiled faintly. You're welcome, Lyra. But the real fight starts now. The desert beyond the city was endless. Lyra and Kale walked under the wide blue sky, the twin suns rising behind them like 2 watchful eyes. The ground shimmered with heat. Wind swept across the dunes, carrying the smell of dust and salt. Lyra's legs ached, but she kept walking. Every few steps she looked up, amazed. The sand wasn't gray anymore. It glowed gold and orange beneath the sunlight. Even the wind looked alive, dancing with light. Kale walked ahead, scanning the horizon. We'll reach the canyon by dusk, he said. There's shelter there and water. Lyra nodded. It's beautiful out here, she whispered. Kale smiled faintly. You've never seen it like this before. No, she said, her voice trembling. It's like the world has been reborn. She paused, turning toward him. You made me see it. He stopped and looked at her. No, Lyra, I just built the tool. You gave yourself the courage to look. They walked on in silence for a while, the soft crunch of sand their only sound. By midday, they reached a ridge overlooking a valley painted in color, green moss glistening over stones, streams running bright blue between golden cliffs. Lyra gasped and knelt at the edge, her hands over her heart. Kale, it's like the world is singing. He chuckled softly. Humans used to say that colors are the music of light. As she stared, something inside her stirred, a feeling of belonging, but also fear. She turned to him. They'll keep chasing us, won't they? Kale's face grew serious. Yes, the temple fears what they can't control. To them, your sight is rebellion. She looked down at the glasses in her hand. Then maybe I shouldn't wear them anymore. Kale shook his head immediately. Don't even think it. They don't just let you see colors. They show you truth. That's what they're really afraid of. Truth, she asked softly. Light reveals everything, he said. Once you see, you can't go back to darkness. And people who live in shadow fear those who don't. His words settled in her heart like fire. As the day passed, they found an old ruin carved into the rocks, a human outpost from a war long gone. Inside were rusted metal beams, broken panels, and a half-collapsed roof. Kale managed to light a small fire, and for the first time in days, they sat in peace. Lyra leaned against the wall, staring at the flames. Kale, she whispered, why do you help me? You could have walked away. You could have left me in that gray city. He poked the fire with a stick, his eyes distant. Because someone once did the same for me. She frowned. Someone help you see colors? He smiled faintly. Not colors. Hope. I was a soldier. I fought in a war that burned half a planet. I saw everything turn to ash. A stranger gave me a reason to believe in life again. Ever since then, I promised to pass that gift forward. Lyra watched him quietly. The firelight danced in his eyes. So now you save others. He shrugged. When I can. Humanity has done terrible things too. Lyra. But we also build. We heal. We help. It's what makes us human. The word struck something deep inside her. She looked down at her hands, violet skin glowing orange from the flames. Maybe it's what makes you different. He smiled softly. Maybe, but maybe it's what could make you different too. Before she could answer, the quiet night broke. A distant echo rolled across the canyon. A metallic hum, followed by sharp flashes of light in the sky. Kale's head shot up. Drones. Lyra froze. They found us. He extinguished the fire instantly. Move. Now. They ran through the ruins as a beam of light sliced the ground behind them. The drones circled above, their searchlights cutting across the desert like blades. Kale pulled her into a narrow tunnel carved into the rock, pressing her against the wall as a blinding beam passed over the entrance. Her heart pounded. Kale, they'll never stop. He looked at her, his face calm but his voice firm. Then we don't stop either. Outside, the wind roared, carrying the distant voices of the temple hunters. Inside the tunnel, the only sound was her trembling breath and his steady whisper. No one can take away what you've already seen, Lyra. Not anymore. Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded. The darkness of the tunnel wrapped around them, but through the faint gap above, sunlight streamed in, a single golden beam that caught her glasses and scattered colors over the wall. She smiled through her tears. Even in the dark, the light finds a way. Kale smiled back. Exactly. They stepped deeper into the tunnel together as the desert outside shimmered beneath the suns. Two fugitives against a world that feared what they represented. And far behind them, in the distant city, the high priest stood on his balcony, staring at the fading light. The human and the cursed one are gone, a guard reported. The priest's voice was cold. Then bring me their ashes. Before her eyes spread truth to others. The tunnel opened at dawn. Lyra blinked as sunlight poured in, soft gold spreading over the rocky cliffs. For a moment, she stood silently, her eyes wide. The desert stretched endlessly, painted with the colors she had grown to love. Burning orange dunes, silver clouds, and pale blue horizons. Kale emerged behind her, his clothes torn, his face smeared with dust. But his eyes still carried that calm fire she trusted. We made it through the night, he said quietly. Lyra smiled faintly. The suns look different today. They always do when you survive till morning, Kale replied with a grin. They moved along the canyon's edge, following a narrow path that wound between cliffs. The air was dry, but Lyra didn't mind. The light felt alive here, real free. Every few steps she stopped to stare at something. The shimmer of water flowing below, the way sunlight turned the rocks into gold, or the sudden bloom of wildflowers clinging to stone. Kale watched her with quiet amusement. You're seeing what most people ignore. Because they already have it, she said softly. They don't know how precious it is. He nodded. That's the danger of sight. You start taking for granted. By midday, they reached a hidden valley. At its center stood a structure half buried in sand. Old metal walls covered in vines, a tower leaning to one side. Faded human letters were still visible on the front. Lyra traced them with her fingers. What does it say? Kale's eyes softened. Hope Station. Inside, the air smelled of rust and dust. Broken screens flickered faintly, powered by a dying generator. Kale brushed sand off a console and began working, tapping in old codes with swift precision. Lyra looked around. There were photos still pinned to a cracked wall, images of human faces smiling, laughing, holding children, standing under trees. Some were faded, but the joy in them felt alive. These were your people? She asked. He nodded slowly. A long time ago. Explorers, healers, teachers. Humans once built places like this all over the galaxy to help other species learn, grow, and live better lives. She looked at him, eyes wide. Then why did they stop? Kale's expression darkened. Fear, war, power. The same things that drive every fall. When others started fearing what humans could do, we pulled back. Some colonies survived, some didn't. Lyra traced a hand over one of the photos. An old image of a man and woman under a blue sky. You try to give light to others. Kale smiled faintly. We still do. Sometimes it just takes one person at a time. She turned to him, her voice trembling. You gave it to me? Before he could answer, the console beeped softly. A blue hologram flickered to life. A recording, old but still clear. A human woman appeared, speaking with warmth and sadness. If anyone finds this message, remember what it means to see, not just with your eyes, but with your heart. The moment you stop seeking beauty, you stop being human. The message ended. Silence filled the room. Lyra's eyes shimmered with tears. She's right, she whispered. Seeing color is not just about the eyes. It's about the soul. Kale looked at her with quiet pride. Exactly. Outside, the wind began to change. A low hum echoed through the valley. Kale's head snapped up instantly. Drones, he said. Lyra's heart dropped. They found us again? He moved to the window, scanning the sky. Tiny black shapes appeared in the distance, growing larger. Yes, they're closing in fast. What do we do? Kale checked his pack. There's an old defense system here. It might still work. He ran to the terminal and began typing furiously. Sparks jumped from the console. Come on, come on. The ground trembled. The first blast hit the cliffside, scattering dust. Lyra ducked as debris rained down. Kale! She shouted. He turned, sweat running down his temple. Get to the tower. It's reinforced. She ran toward it, clutching the glasses tight. Behind her, another explosion shook the station. Kale fired at the drones, his blaster glowing red. One drone fell, then another, but there were too many. Inside the tower, Lyra looked through a shattered window. Kale stood in the open, firing again and again, protecting her like a shield of flesh and will. Kale, she screamed. He turned just as a blast hit the ground beside him, throwing him backward. No, she cried, racing down the stairs. Smoke filled the air and heat stung her skin. She found him lying near the entrance, coughing, his side burned. He smiled weakly. Still here. Can't kill me that easily. Tears streamed down her cheeks. You can't fight them all. He reached for her hand, gripping it tightly. Then run. Run and keep seeing the world. Promise me. She shook her head violently. I won't leave you. He looked into her eyes, green, shining alive. Lyra, you were born in gray. But now you carry the light. Don't let them take it. Outside, the drones gathered, preparing another strike. Lyra's trembling hand reached for the control panel near the door. She didn't understand the symbols, but her instincts screamed. And for the first time, her new eyes, saw the colors glowing on the buttons. Blue for defense, red for power, yellow for shield. Kale's lessons echoed in her mind. Light reveals truth. She slammed the red switch. The ground shook violently. Ancient turrets hidden in the cliffs roared to life, firing beams of blinding light. The drones shattered like glass under the storm of color. When the dust settled, the valley was quiet again. Lyra dropped to her knees beside Kale, tears falling onto his chest. He looked up at her, a faint smile on his lips. "You saw the right one," he whispered. She squeezed his hand. "I just followed the light." Smoke hung heavy in the air. The old human station trembled. Its towers cracked, its walls scarred by light and fire. Lyra knelt beside Kale, holding his hand tightly. His breathing was shallow, his voice faint, but his eyes, his calm, human eyes, were still full of strength. "Stay with me," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. He smiled weakly. "You did it, Lyra. You saved us." "I didn't, you did," she said, shaking her head. "You taught me to see." Kale coughed softly, his lips curling into a faint smile. "Then keep seeing. Keep fighting for it. Promise me you'll never let the world turn gray again." "I promise," she said, voice breaking. The sunlight poured through the cracks in the roof, scattering over her face and glasses, casting a rainbow across the dusty floor. The colors danced on Kale's chest as his hand slowly relaxed in hers. "Kale!" she whispered, but he did not answer. Silence fell. Outside, the wind carried away the last trails of smoke. Lyra sat beside him for a long time, her hands trembling, her eyes full of color and tears. The glasses, now cracked on one side, reflected the full spectrum of the morning light. Then, slowly, she stood. For a moment, she looked up at the sky, the same sky she had once seen as gray, now painted in brilliant blues and golds. The colors felt alive, as if the world itself was breathing beside her. "I'll keep your promise," she said softly. "I'll show them the light." Years later, the story of the cursed girl who saw colors spread across the stars. Lyra became a symbol, not of rebellion, but of truth. She traveled from planet to planet, wearing the repaired glasses Kale had built, teaching others that beauty was not forbidden. It was necessary. Her voice carried through alien halls, through broken colonies, through cities where fear once ruled. "Light is not a crime," she told them. "To see is to live." She rebuilt Hope Station, turning it into a sanctuary for all who've been called cursed, broken, or blind. Humans, aliens, hybrids, anyone who wanted to see the world as it truly was found refuge there. Children ran to the corridors laughing, touching the colored glass panels that scattered rainbows on their skin. The walls that had once held silence now echoed with life again. Sometimes she would stand on the balcony at sunset, the twin suns painting the horizon in red and violet. She'd close her eyes and whisper, "You were right, Kale. Light reveals everything." And in that light, she could almost feel him, a shadow beside her, a warmth at her shoulder, a voice in the wind saying, "That's my girl." Many years after, when the temple finally fell and the people reclaimed their freedom, they built a monument in the heart of the city. It wasn't a statue of a warrior or a king. It was of a man kneeling beside a small alien girl, placing a pair of glasses in her hands. At the base, a single line was carved in human and alien script. He showed her colors. She showed the galaxy hope. And as dawn broke over the city, the sunlight hit the monument just right, scattering a rainbow across the stone. Lyra stood before it, her hair silver in the morning light, her eyes bright as ever. Around her, children pointed at the rainbow with laughter and wonder. She smiled, whispering, "Every color began with one human heart." And with that, the story of Kale and Lyra, the human who gave sight and the alien who carried his light, became legend across worlds.